Hey everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is our 238th episode. It's being recorded on February 13th, but this is really our Valentine's Day episode. I'm Ryan Schrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Alan Mamontano.
None of you guys sounded like you were deeply, madly in love with the idea of this being a Valentine's Day show.
And I'm Alan.
You're right.
I sent you guys all cards.
Well, I
Did you
sent
get them?
Ken some chocolates, and he ignores me.
You sent us cards?
No.
No.
You didn't get yours? That's so weird. Everybody else got theirs. It had $1 million in it, too. Josh, did yours get lost in the mail, too?
No, I cashed it yesterday, so I actually own PC Perspective.
Oh, you cash it? That sucks.
Oh, you got
Mike is
ripped
gonna
off,
be
man.
Pissed. It was a slow week this past week, I think it's fair to say. Not a whole lot of stuff going on. News bits that came out. And we'll talk about a couple of reviews, a little preview I did. Actually, did we talk about the Tablet 2 last week? We did not, did we? Ken, if you get a chance, will you get the one out of my backpack? But before we get into that, let's talk about what's going on this coming week at PC Perspective. We have a couple of cool events, one of which is a live stream event. If you followed our live events that we did sponsored by AMD last quarter, we did, what did we do? We did Medal of Honor Warfighter, we did Far Cry 3, and we did, what was the other game? Hitman Absolution, there you go. And we did game streams with that, and most importantly, with prizes. So this time we're going to do it again. We've got a group of these games lined up, starting with Crysis 3. We're going to do a game stream on February the 19th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. You can see the post up here at pcper.com. We are going to be joined by Robert Halleck, again from AMD. We have prizes, and that include, we have 2 Power Color Radeon HD 7970s. Ken, are you showing the screen? We have 2 Radeon HD 7970s to give away that will come with the Crysis 2 or Crysis 3 and BioShock Infinite. I'm really screwing this up already. Keys, and then we also have 4 more promo combo codes that we'll give away that include Crysis 3 and BioShock Infinite in that as well. So that is what is confirmed. Now we may have a little bit more stuff, but that is what we're starting with. So February 19th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. PCPro.com/live is where we want to be for that. We will also have another event, live event, that day, probably earlier in the day. That will be an NVIDIA event. Stay tuned.
I wonder what it could be.
I guess we'll have an NVIDIA representative whose name rhymes with Meterson. And he'll be
whose initials rhyme with FAP.
Yeah, I was trying to. It took me a while because now there's the middle initial in there too. So yeah, we have a lot of cool stuff coming up this week. We're very busy, and we would appreciate it if you guys joined us for all these cool things that are going to happen. What else we have going on? This I was hoping to have done before this week's podcast, but I didn't get a chance to get it finished, thanks in large part to graphics card companies. But we posted a preview, which is code from me that means I didn't have time to do a full review, but here's a shorter look at the product of the Lenovo ThinkPad Tablet 2. Very cool device. It's the first device I have powered by Intel Clover Trail, which is the new Atom Z2760 processor, 1.8 gigahertz, dual core, hyper-threaded. This is an interesting little device. Very thin, very light, 1.3 pounds. We actually got not rated, but tested battery life running our PC Perspective kind of proprietary Wi-Fi battery testing, where it's just cycling through browsing websites at 9 hours and 14 minutes. So they rated it at 10 hours, and it got 9 and 14. That's much closer than any other notebook or tablet I've ever tested. A pretty cool device. We posted a preview on PCPro.com with a little video here as well. It's kind of cool. It's got HDMI, it's got your audio output, it's got SIM card, it's got SD card slot. Some models come with the digitizer pen. Some do not, so pay attention with that. This model was priced at $739. It has 64 gigs of storage, but interestingly, it is not an SSD, it's an eMMC, which is an embedded memory card controller, which maybe Alan can give us is there a difference to that in terms of anything like that? No, not for Alan. Okay, it's uncanny how he's able to do that. The short story is that it's slow storage, right? We're talking about 60 to 70 megs per second read speeds when we ran like a typical storage benchmark. But for this type of device, you don't really need super high end.
Yeah, I was going to say for like 1998, that's really good speeds.
It's not great, but it probably allowed them to keep costs down and maybe make it thinner. And I don't really know, but 60 megs per second write speeds. If you're doing more than that on this particular device, you're probably trying to do too much with it, but we'll see.
Is that Android or Windows?
Windows, full Windows. So it's
Windows 8.
It's Windows 8 Pro. It's x86 based. It's an Atom part, so you can see, and it actually runs pretty well. This is very.
And I bet you there'll be more of them than there are of the full Windows Surface tablets.
The Surface Pro or the Surface RT?
The Surface Pro. The actual x86 based one.
Maybe.
Apparently there's a lot of 64, but not a lot of 128s.
You got to keep in mind, this is a totally different class of device, right? This is an Atom-based processor, and the Surface Pro is an Ivy Bridge-based processor.
True.
So in terms of CPU performance, there's going to be a huge difference. But I say, I have the Surface RT, I have the Asus VivoTab RT, and I have this now. And there's just something about the safety of being able to run x86 applications if you need to. They're not ideal. Using the touchscreen in the Windows desktop environment on a 10-inch tablet is not ideal. It's not perfect, but if you need to do it, you can do it. They have accessories that we'll detail when we do our full review: a keyboard dock, a Bluetooth keyboard dock, and then like here it's sitting here, this Office dock where you dock it in the front there, and then it gives it HDMI, Ethernet, and USB, and all some extra data connectivity that way. So it's interesting. I think it's pretty compelling. It's maybe a little bit steep on the price, but we'll dive more into that when we do our full review shortly. I'm not going to even promise by the next podcast because my time between now and the next podcast will be minimal. Free time.
How robust is it in terms of physical design?
Does it feel like a ThinkPad I could throw on the ground type of thing?
Yes.
It does, actually. It does. It doesn't feel cheap and plasticky. It is plastic, but it's not made out of like the magnesium stuff. It kind of feels like the X1 Carbon that you used while you were at CES. It has that kind of design to it, and it just feels like that. The material feels like that.
Could you go outside and skip it across the parking lot for me?
No, I do have two of them here. We had an issue with one that this one is fixed, but I think no. I think I won't do that. Not on purpose.
That's too bad. I would pay at least $2 or $3 to see that video.
Maybe I'll put that idea up on Kickstarter.
You will probably get money for that.
Yeah, if people are dumb enough to donate or to offer to maybe potentially donate money to build an X-wing or a Death Star on Kickstarter, then I think anything I put up there would get at least $20. Also posted up right before the podcast went live, Roswell Tachyon Series 1000-watt power supply review. This is another in a series of power supply reviews that Lee has published on PCPer.com for us. 1000-watt, single 12-volt rail. We'll have to bring in Alan maybe eventually and ask him about the arc welding project and how that's going.
Yeah, arc welding.
It has 6 8-pin. Did he just show back up? Is this...
Just for the arc welding. I heard power supply. And, yes.
I had a question for you about storage, but you were gone apparently, so we'll get back to you on that a little bit later.
Sorry, I had to grab my picks of the week. They were heavy.
Okay. It's not engine parts, is
dear
it?
Lord.
No, they're not engine parts.
This power supply sells for $189 on Newegg. Obviously only at Newegg, I think, since it is a Roswell product. They got up to 83 amps on the single 12-volt output. So, Alan, is that arc weldable?
Most definitely.
Okay. How many amps do we need to weld?
Probably like 60 or 70.
That's it? Okay. All right. And that's great.
I mean,
he
you
did
can't
say,
go welding huge, you know.
well,
whatever.
yeah. He did say struggled to meet the 80 plus platinum criteria while operating at the higher temperatures that we were testing it at. And the cooling fan could be a little bit higher quality for a premium CPU. But this is an 80 plus platinum for $189. So pretty good. Pretty decent there. Now, we have Josh, who is apparently in the middle of finishing a review.
Yes.
Now, do we want to talk about this now? Because I don't have any cool stuff to show.
No, I don't have any. I edited all the pictures. I just haven't been able to upload them. All the words are there, but words are meaningless.
In your head or
forgettable.
on the page?
All the words are on the page.
Oh, I can see them in the beautiful pink.
Well, tell us maybe what the product is and a brief, like a really, really brief preview, and then we'll talk about it next week.
That sounds good. A couple of months ago,
Yeah.
Gigabyte sent the GA F2A 85X-UP4. Did I
Onomatopoeia.
get that right?
Sure.
Does it sound like onomatopoeia? What, Alan?
I don't know. I heard like letter vomit, so I just
It must be Gigabyte.
I think that that is a good way to categorize all of Gigabytes.
To be honest,
Name.
most motherboard vendors are like that. Even Asus, which is like the
No, but they
P8
use words
Z77.
like deluxe or pro. Or
Yeah, but it's still P8 Z77, and MSI has like the Z77A GD65. It's not quite as bad as Gigabyte, but nobody's great at it. Anyway,
Nobody.
continue.
This is an FM2 motherboard, and you can't see the article yet. It will be up probably about an hour and a half after.
If you're listening to this
Podcast
downloaded,
ends.
you'll be able to go see the article. If you're watching us live, which we always encourage you to do at pcpro.com/live, Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern, you're out of luck. But continue. I apologize.
Anyway, it's kind of an interesting motherboard because Gigabyte has that interesting IR chips for supplying power to the CPU, and they're a little bit more efficient. They run cooler. The digital controller is not only accurate, but it's very fast in dealing with power usage and power desires. But the problem is, how do you make an enthusiast product for a CPU that is not considered enthusiast?
Right.
So the A10 5800K, while a decent product, it's got good performance in terms of an integrated GPU. It's not really an enthusiast product. It doesn't overclock all that well. Performance is not that great as compared to products that are maybe $20 to $30 more expensive. It's got 2 modules, 4 cores, and for like $10 more, you can get an AM3 Plus part that's 6 cores. That's going to run significantly faster in pretty much every scenario. And then you've also got the Intel products that are at the same price point and a little bit higher. And again, you'll get better performance, potentially better overclocking. And so Gigabyte is kind of sitting in this strange place. It's like, we kind of need to make a higher-end motherboard for this. We want to throw all these features in, but we're really limited by the price of the CPU. The highest-end CPU for FM2 is $129. You usually can find it for $119. So their upper limit is right at $129 for a motherboard. Otherwise, people are not as interested in buying the motherboard for that particular CPU. So Gigabyte had to do a lot of little sacrifices to get this to work, as well as put in these nice, power phases that should feed this 100-watt TDP CPU more than adequately.
Right.
But they're also banging up against the wall of being able to overclock Trinity, which Trinity does not overclock all that well.
Right.
So I went through, some of the performance. Performance was good. Overclocking ability matched that of other FM2 parts. And the overall feature set is really, really, really good. But you just have to ask yourself, is Trinity worth it for this motherboard, or should I just save $30 and go with something a little bit more basic, because I'm not going to be doing a whole lot with this CPU? Well, we can go into more detail next week as everything's posted, and I can have some more specific things to talk about. But it's AMD's kind of put their motherboard partners in a bit of a quandary, because why do you develop high-end boards for a CPU that is far from being high-end?
One of life's great mysteries. Maybe not life's, but at least one of Josh's. At least one of Josh's. So, like I said, we didn't have a real busy week in terms of reviews at PCPer.com, but we do have a lot of news to talk about. But before we do that, before we dive into the news, we're going to do two things. We're going to see if our new system for streaming totally breaks and fails. But more importantly, we're going to get a visit from our good friend Alex at MSI, who has a message for us.
The all-new Z77 M-Power mainboard from MSI is poised to change the overclocking game. Every Z77 M-Power board will have a factory 24-hour military-class burn-in test completed before shipping. Additionally, performance-optimized features such as Go-To BIOS, Multi-BIOS 2, V-checkpoints, Bluetooth 3.0, and onboard Wi-Fi allow users convenience and total system control over their overclocking and gaming experience. This is the new endurance champion, Z77 M-Power from MSI.
Thank you very much, Alex, and thank you, MSI, for your support of our podcast and our growing community of listeners and live viewers as well. We have good news. We have good news as well. I think it's official, almost-ish official. Alex will be here in studio next month, and we'll be doing a live event, of course, while he's here, and we'll be recording some new ad spots. And maybe if he happens to be here on a Wednesday, we can have Alex join the podcast. Would that be... Maybe he could do a live
ad?
Live read.
That would totally freak him out.
Would he have any jokes for us?
And you know what you're going to have him say? The all-new.
Will you have enough time to get him drunk beforehand?
The all-new, whatever product you want me to say.
He just says it exactly the same thing. He just doesn't lie.
So, yes, thank you very much, MSI, for your continued support of PC Perspective and our podcast. But let's move on to some other news items. So this is still a rumor, still a report, but when AMD went out, I think we talked about this part last week, didn't we, about the Never Settle Reloaded bundle and the new game bundle that they were doing with Crysis and Crysis 3 and Bioshock Infinite and Tomb Raider and a bunch of other games if you happen to buy a Crossfire configuration. Well, apparently when they were briefing some people in Asia, they showed a slightly different slide deck to the media, and one of the slides was this one here. And what you see there is 7900 series, 7800 series, 7700 series, and it says stable throughout 2013, which...
They were just saying their drivers were going to be better.
Yeah, that would have been nice. But various reports are basically saying now that AMD is not going to have any new graphics cards throughout the entirety of 2013. At least in this particular image, it shows through Q3 of 2013, AMD has no plans to update or add to its discrete graphics card roadmap. We heard whispers of this while we were at CES in January, and it seems to be somewhat validated at this point, or maybe not. We don't really know for 100% sure. One thing that's also kind of annoying is the second image, which I'll zoom in on a little bit here, that they showed that shows the product stacks between AMD and the competition, and it's just not accurate. It's just not a fair representation. And if you see at the bottom there, it says 3D Mark Firestrike Performance.
Firestrike.
Right, so they're only using one particular benchmark, which at this point happens to heavily favor the AMD cards in terms of
Ice Storm
performance. The cloud.
Yeah, that's a rather optimistic.
It is.
Western Islands.
And I'm not mad at them necessarily for doing that, but if I'm mad at media who maybe show that and don't say along with it like I did that it is very inaccurate. So what do we think about this idea that AMD may not have new cards through 2013? Do we think it's true? And if it is true, it's bad. How bad is it?
It's an interesting question because, like you said, at CES, we talked to partners. Partners said we have no idea what's going on. We usually have a lead time of a couple of months before these new products, and nobody was saying anything. Some of the smaller guys that, are usually some of the release partners, I mean, they basically said, yeah, we've got nothing that we know of for the next 2 quarters, so that's Q1, Q2. And, we got to also, from AMD, apparently they're going to have a conference call this week discussing this issue in a little bit more detail.
Where do you hear this type of information at, Josh?
That was PC World posted that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well then, okay, yeah, I'm supposed to be in that conference call too.
Oh, okay.
I thought that we were supposed to keep that private, but if I'm PC World, I don't have to.
No, because they're PC World.
That's still a thing. Anyway, continue.
It apparently is. So, if we kind of look at the marketplace, I think that there was a little bit more optimism on where the 28 nanometer process was going to be by this time. Come to find out, I believe that when TSMC's 28 nanometer process was released, there was, there was going to be some room for improvement, but not the type of room for improvement that we're going to see significantly larger parts come out that will have, the same type TDP range as the current, like 7970, 7950, and, on down the line. And so they may have been planning these higher-end parts, but probably when they were test fabbing them out, they just were not seeing the improvements with the process that, perhaps they were expecting, because 28 nanometers been out for, a year and 2 months or so? And you would expect some improvements there, but we really haven't seen anything. Yeah, AMD went with the gigahertz edition, but that was something they were able to do really at release, but they just really didn't.
Correct. And that was also kind of a response to the GTX 680 and the idea of GPU boost and, hey, look what NVIDIA has done, and you don't have anything like this. I really felt like the gigahertz edition was we can do something like that type of thing.
Exactly. Now that we've got this other release next week, we may be hearing more from AMD. But, they only have so much wiggle room in terms of what they can do with die size and TDPs with this generation of parts. They kind of maxed out the 28 nanometer node already with their design and with the products that they're offering. And so it's not surprising to me that they would not have anything for the next 2.5 quarters, potentially 3. They're going to have to go to some new technology to be able to lower TDPs and still, grow out the die size at the 28 nanometer node. Who knows if that's going to be, Global Foundries and the common platform guys.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I was going to say. Is when is GlowFlow planning on doing the process change?
They're gonna. They're testing out some 28 nanometer stuff now. They're not going to be able to ramp that up until Q3 of this year, and we won't see product until at least the end of Q4. So we're talking December before any Global Foundries 28 nanometer parts are really going to hit the market. Even though they say they're producing them now, there's not really a single product out there that's using that process technology. Now, one of the more interesting things is, what if they go to an FD-SOI 28 nanometer process from one of these partners and be able to get faster performance, stay within the same TDP range, and be able to release new products. Now, with planar based transistors on FD-SOI, they are seeing these advancements, these power and performance advancements as compared to standard 28 nanometer high K metal gate type processor that we see from TSMC. And so that's something to consider. Even though that's kind of a long shot to be able to do it, we know that Global Foundries is going to have 28 nanometer FD-SOI around that time frame because that's where ST Micro will be manufacturing their FD-SOI based Cortex A9 processors. So yeah, the looking glass is pretty cloudy. Well, the crystal ball is cloudy. Am I mixing metaphors yet?
Yeah, a little.
Oh, you're working on it.
Yeah.
But this is probably wishful thinking. But could there be some refinement of existing series, over the next year or so while they're either focusing on console, focusing on R&D, waiting for a manufacturer to catch up, or just saying, hey, NVIDIA isn't really screaming that what they've got is going to completely destroy us at the price points we've got. Performance, we'll see. But, is it possible that instead of saying, oh, this rebadged chip is a brand new product, it'll just be the Gigahertz Plus Edition Super type?
Right. Which, do we consider that to be a new part, or is that not a new part? I would probably consider that a not new part.
As do I. NVIDIA would consider it a brand new series.
Well, and I think there's some confusion as well, because when we were at CS, we talked about the 8000 series for the mobile parts. We talked about, what was that family called? Solar System? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
And so I think many people just assumed that these were going to be refreshed parts that would be seen out in the desktop world as well. But according to that particular slide, that maybe I will be updated on Friday, is incorrect. I don't know. So we'll see. Jeremy, let's talk with you about a news story that Scott posted up titled "It's More Than Windows Feeling Blue." He likes his catchy titles. Tell me about what information came out from a new report. It was over at ZDNet about the long-awaited kind of subscription-based Windows?
More or less, yeah. They are going full out with a subscription-based model, and they've decided to color code it. Not that we've ever stared at 4 differently colored panes of glass whenever we've booted up Windows, but you're going to have blue Windows. Red will be Office, which we've already seen what Office 365 is like. Green will be the Xbox, and yellow is, well, it's yellow. We'll find out. But essentially what they're saying is that blue is a codename project that they're going to use to, as opposed to releasing a brand new Windows every 3 to however many years it takes, every year or so, they're going to try and put out a bunch of new products. It's not necessarily going to be a completely brand new OS, but it will be something that's a little bit new. It's probably going to be more than just a couple of features, although at the same time it's kind of hard to question how they're going to roll out completely brand new file systems or any of the other things that we sort of expect from a new release of Windows. On the other hand, it means no more Vistas probably. So it's going to be interesting to see, and in a way it seems very squishy, because they're not saying that it's going to be, we'll set a date and there's going to be a whole bunch of major changes go on for the Windows operating system. It's more along the lines of, we're going to set a date and, sort of scattered around that date are going to be some updates that arrive. They're vague, but, they're talking about new versions of IE, they're talking about new versions of the wonderful Exchange alternative that they call Mail, Calendar, Bing, but expect to see brand new tiles appear on your desktop. I'm not sure that I'm a huge fan of this sort of an update model, but on the other hand, if they're really trying to abandon the corporate model for part of the operating system, thinking about spreading the two of them apart, maybe this works, but coming from an enterprise standpoint, no. Once a year I have to deal with major updates. No, I'll just stick with the Windows updates and try and figure those ones out. I'm not sure.
Well, I personally like the idea of, I don't know, maybe subscription-based Windows. I've become so used to the idea of Steam and kind of what it does with DRM support and protecting the software provider and then making it.
But if your Steam works,
easy.
you can still boot your computer.
Yeah, I know. I don't know exactly how you get around that, but I even kind of like the idea of like the Adobe subscription stuff that they have for production software like Premiere and that kind of thing.
Oh, the update prices? Yeah.
Well, no, like where you can subscribe now. You pay $40 a month,
Yep.
$30 a month, and you get whatever the latest version is all the time, right? And it's kind of pushed to you automatically and that kind of stuff. And I think that has some pretty high potential. It does eventually become where everybody's nickel and diming you to death, only it's $10 and $20 you to death with monthly subscription fees, but we've been down that road for a while already.
But
so.
annual iterative upgrades, if Windows 8 was not corporate friendly, this is not something people are even going to think about.
Well, as long as they're not, if it's something you're going to get anyway as part of your recurring licensing fee, and they're not huge dramatic changes, I'd imagine that they would be more subtle things that happen over the course of a couple of 3 years than as opposed to like the dramatic shifts you get going from XP to Vista to 7 to 8, right? So I don't know. I could see business falling in line with that if it made financial sense as well, because that's really what they care about the most.
Yeah, because that $130 Windows XP license that we bought in 2003 and is still in use today.
Not for very much longer.
Yeah, well, still, return on investment there was
high.
Big.
Yeah. They don't want you to do that anymore. And I think I think it's fair for them to say $130 for that maybe is that type of length of use. I don't know. They provide updates. I guess, are they still doing updates for XP?
Yes. It's around 400 days, just a little under.
Yeah, 2014
more days
is
of Windows
when it
XP support. That is
stops.
nuts.
It's the only actual Windows 7, what do they call those things that you add to your desktop? Widgets?
Oh, yeah.
That is the only widget I've ever installed, is the countdown clock to the death of Windows XP.
The world of IT
And
professional.
I look forward to it.
Let's talk about the, I don't know, a RAM chip, a NAND module, and an ultra capacitor.
Did you just say a NAND module?
A NAND module.
A NAND module.
And a NAND module.
It's a module install to get this kind of short Iranian guy to come talk to you about tech.
Hey, if that's what it takes, we'll bring him on. I got no problem with that. Yeah. So, Alan, let's talk about Micron releasing a press bias for a technology called the NVDIMM that is not from NVIDIA.
Yes, that's labeled by engineers. In
Yeah,
other words,
it happens.
not marketing people. No, it's basically just a DIMM where they put all the RAM dies on one side of the board, and then on the other side there's what looks like just a controller and a flash memory chip. So all it does is, and it also has a capacitor. Sorry. So the capacitor keeps it going long enough for after power loss to dump all of the RAM contents onto the flash before the whole thing shuts down.
Good news.
So I mean that's cool and all, but this is not going to be just stuff to throw in your PC.
Why not?
I mean it's just not, because the first thing any standard PC CPU does when you fire it up is go in and like clear the RAM. So it's not going to matter. You're starting from a fresh boot, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of other stuff has to fall in line in order for this to, it's not like you're going to shut your system or your system's going to lose power and then it's just going to come right back up as if you just came out of standby or something.
Is that the intent of this, but there has to be like a specific operating system built for that in mind?
Yeah, there has to be a lot of other stuff that falls into line for this to work. Like, I would imagine motherboard, the motherboard itself has to be modified somewhat or run something different at the BIOS level.
It's got to run something different at the BIOS level.
Yeah.
Otherwise
A lot
it's
of other
gonna boot
things
from
have to happen.
RAM rather than boot from a storage drive.
Yeah. So, I mean, because the motherboard is still going to have to go through its somewhat of a post, right? But then somehow it's going to have to do some kind of handoff where it says, okay, CPU, here's the RAM that you had 20 minutes ago. Go, right? There's going to have to be something else that allows it to do that.
Could you imagine what malware will do with this?
Well,
oh, wow, I caught a virus and shut down my computer. And
see, there's actually some other really nasty... there's some other really nasty security implications.
If you feed it too much voltage, can it etch itself in?
No. See, here's the thing. For forensic guys and guys that want to actually see what was in the RAM of a system, they could just walk up to one of these
and
just yank the plug out of the wall, and they'll know for sure that when they fire that RAM stick back up, it's going to tell it. It's going to tell you everything that it had stored in it, which is, from a security perspective, really, really crappy. I mean, you want the volatile stuff to go away when the system shuts down from a security standpoint. You're talking about password hashes, things that are normally put in RAM and expect to just go away if power gets lost. That is a degree of security that computer systems generally sort of built around. But yeah, that goes away when you have your RAM automatically backing itself up and then just, here you go. Did you want an image of the entire RAM contents? Here, just turn me back on. I'll read it back from the flash. I'll do it for you.
If you're a hacker, if you're doing things you're not supposed to do, definitely don't install these. If your house were to get raided,
what I'm thinking it might be useful for is it might be useful. It'll probably first be seen in clusters or computer network, like networked, really high-speed clusters that do like virtualization type stuff where you have a lot of virtual images running all in RAM, and you want to be able to have the system go down, but then come back up and resume where it was. So in other words, it wouldn't like your host operating system would reboot normally, but then here's your bank of RAM that it was using for some other like sort of caching stuff.
Right.
But security-wise, we're talking. I know what you did last summer.
It is exactly. It's like there are tricks. Like if you want to break into a system, the easiest way to do it is if you happen to come up on it, even if it's in a locked state. If you approach it while it's still running, because then the idea is you're trying to do whatever you can to get a dump of that RAM. You want all the RAM contents. Then you almost have the keys to the kingdom at that point. So in this case, they could just walk up to it and yank the plug out of the wall to make sure nobody tries to go in behind, remotely and delete stuff. It's just, it's off now. But guess what? It just saved all of its guts on its own.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I'm way less excited about this than I was hoping to be.
Well, and what real need is there for it right now? I mean,
I don't know.
If you were in the middle of your Word document,
RAM disk, Ken says.
It's sure, I guess.
I was kind of hoping for the idea of like instant boot.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like where
there's other stuff that has to happen there because this is just the RAM contents.
Right. No, I get it now. I didn't realize that there was that big of a hurdle on the software side to get through.
There's actually a very little bit of info that's not being saved in this case that is vital to being able to just pick up where you left off, and that's like where the actual CPU registers are at, like what's stored in them, like what part of the RAM was the CPU just executing before you lost power, right? That's not saved in the RAM. That's saved on the CPU, and that does go away when you lose power. So, even if you had this stuff in there, your CPU would have no idea where to pick up where it was.
All right, fair enough. Raspberry Pi is a thing. We haven't talked about it a whole lot here. We've talked about it on the podcast and that kind of thing. I actually got one in this week. But they released
you can play Minecraft now.
That's what Ken told me. The day I got this in, they released the Minecraft client for it.
I'm not as impressed with Raspberry Pi as I used to be.
Why?
It's an ARM 11 processor. It's a piece of crap.
Yep.
Piece of crap. Why develop for ARM 11 when you got so many other nicer things out there?
It's $25. Anyway, hold on. Before we get, because this is going to be my pick.
Okay.
To pursue you.
20 of that's the case.
They released a 5 megapixel camera module for this as well. They apparently began with a 41 megapixel sensor, but then moved to a smaller and cheaper camera with a 5 megapixel sensor. Is there anything particularly interesting about this, Jeremy, that you saw other than, first little add-ons for the Raspberry Pi device?
Well, in essence, that is essentially what is cool about this, because the Raspberry Pi is essentially what we older people used to know as the Radio Shack and Tandy kits that you built yourself on a circuit board. In this case, it's a lot like an Arduino and Shields. It's just a different, more hip way of learning basic programming, learning basic input-output, and at the same time, it's actually got a lot more functionality than we used to have. With cameras, Ethernet connections, these things.
Yes.
I wish I had them when I was a kid, just like I wish I had firing rockets on my G.I. Joes.
Right.
But, it's interesting, and in some cases for people that are doing projects where, they want to automate something, and, a Raspberry Pi is a little bit easier to work with in some cases. So, hey, now you've got a much higher quality camera attached to it.
Right.
But, apart from that, it's not huge. Heathkit. I forgot Heathkit.
What's that?
Oh, you don't remember Heathkit? Build your own radio?
Get radio.
I'm still stuck on the whole G.I. Joe radio-controlled tank thing.
I know, eh?
It's a good idea.
I still have a Heathkit radio somewhere. I don't know where.
So I just want to take... I haven't really used this yet. I don't know what to do with it. But the fact that it's an ARM11 processor doesn't dissuade me from trying to... The interesting thing about this is I received 2 computers this week that arrived. One of them arrived on a pallet. Not lying. It arrived on a pallet out of a freight truck. And this one showed up in an padded envelope in my mailbox. And this one was $25, and the other system was not $25. Let's say that it was many, many times more than $25.
A couple of orders of magnitude?
Yeah, at least 2+. And obviously they do very different things. But I was kind of sitting here and I was trying to think of, like, what are the... Like, these are the 2 polar opposites of the DIY market. This is a DIY computer to some degree, right? You can do certain things with it. And the other one is a DIY computer that somebody happened to put together for me. But, like, if you sat down with, like, my mother and said, well, these are your 2 computer options.
Do I have to?
You do. If these are your 2 computer options, and on this one, you can browse the internet, and you can play video back because it has a built-in H.264 decoder in it, so it'll play 1080p video. You can do XBMC. She would know what that is, but it's like you can browse the web with this, and that's all she would do with the other one too. For the most part. And
and that other one would only pull like 300 watts of power at idle.
At idle, probably. I haven't tested that yet, but yeah, something to that degree. And this, I don't know what it's rated at, but it's probably got to be 3 watts total. 5 watts total max.
Oh, you'd have to do something nasty, but yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting to think about these 2 polar opposites that are both new today, right? This is new and exciting. The other thing will be new and exciting, and they do completely different things, but they have a lot of overlap in what they'll do. And I don't know. It'll be curious. We're going to play around with this and see what we get out of it. I mean, because it's $25. Like, it's at this point, it's.
Well, I tell you, at least 15 of that's the case.
Well, this with the case was $40, so it's $25 for just the Raspberry Pi itself, or $35 maybe, because this is the one with Ethernet, and I think the newer, cheaper one doesn't have Ethernet, but it has audio output, it has analog video output, it has HDMI, Ethernet, 2 USB ports, SD card. And you can do some very creative things with it. Things that are probably I'm not creative enough to do, to be completely honest with you. But for $25, it's like, why not buy one if they're available and just play around
Make
with
it into a router.
Yeah, maybe I can make it into a router. Well, it has one Ethernet port. We could use a USB Ethernet adapter, right, and limit it to 30 megabit, or no, 30 megs. So that would work. No, we can do that. But yeah, so I mean, it's interesting to see. What's that? All right. Okay, so let's move on. We talked about the AMD bundle last time. We talked about the fact that NVIDIA hasn't been responding very well to these types of things. The entire Never Settle campaign over the holiday season last year was completely, overshadowed anything that NVIDIA did. So NVIDIA came out with their bundle this week with $150, up to $150 in credit on free-to-play games for GTX buyers. So World of Tanks, Hawken, PlanetSide 2. We may remember PlanetSide 2 from we used that on some post-podcast game streams that we did, and we had a decent amount of fun with that, I think, for considering that we had such little experience with it. So what will happen here now is if you buy a GTX card, here's the matrix. If you buy a 660 or higher, you'll get $50 in credit for each of those 3 games, so a total of $150. And no, it's not. You don't get to spend all $150 on PlanetSide 2 if you wanted to or something like that. It's $50 per game. If you buy a 650 or 650 Ti, it's $25 per game. And it's a very interesting approach, right? So they talk about, what the minimum spec on PlanetSide 2 or the recommended GPU for PlanetSide 2 is now a 670. They've added PhysX support into it, so take that for what you will. And it is basically the polar opposite of bundle campaign. And I don't know if this is AMD finally won the bidding war for Crysis. NVIDIA didn't want to spend any more money, and they said, well, we have to do something. Let's work with these smaller developers, big communities, but smaller developers, and they'll be more willing to work with us for less money to help drum up support for their particular titles, right? So I'm asking for some feedback in this post. Is like, what do you think about this? The unfortunate thing is, I think maybe a lot of people that listen to our show have a stigma against the free-to-play games. World of Tanks, Hawken. Actually, I didn't even know Hawken was free-to-play, I don't think.
It is. It's also fun to play.
Is it? You like that?
Yeah.
And see, I had fun on PlanetSide too, but there's a different mindset to free-to-play where you're buying perks and you're buying weapons and you're buying certain credits that you don't really understand. To me, it was more confusing than a standard multiplayer game would necessarily be just starting out. But it's a huge community of people. PlanetSide 2 is incredibly popular, so I'm just curious how well this may affect their sales. And it's going right up against the AMD campaign that gives you huge AAA titles like Crysis 3 and BioShock and Tomb Raider and that kind of stuff. So, you guys have any thoughts or feedback on this kind of stuff? Okay, all right. We've got Jeremy's vote. Anybody else?
I wish that they had the $150 of credits on DC Universe so I could recover what my child spent while I was at CES.
Kids. Aren't they great?
Aren't kids wonderful?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, seriously, what do you think about credits for free-to-play? Obviously, it's a totally different thing. It's not like they didn't pick League of Legends. I think that's pretty much a saturated market at this point. Do you think it will be like equal effectiveness, dramatically lower effectiveness than what AMD's doing?
I think it's going to be dramatically lower. I mean, sure, Hawken's going to be interesting to some folks. PlanetSide 2, yeah, I don't know. How long's that been out? And how effective? I mean, they just had a big 4-gig patch that I downloaded today thinking we might play something. And that other one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
The only way it makes any sense to me is free-to-play titles are probably playable on a 650, 660 GPU. So you're paying, $150 to $200 for a GPU that isn't going to be. You aren't even going to think about playing single-A titles or AAA titles.
PlanetSide 2 is a pretty GPU-intense game. It really is. When we played it, I mean, there were some high-end visual effects that you could enable, and especially when you get into the outdoor areas that are huge and expansive.
True.
I think it's definitely the most taxing. I think if I look at the recommended list, yeah.
And I also think it's telling that they didn't get it from some of the other not so free-to-play but with in-game currency titles.
Like what?
Just about all of the other ones where, you can pay your basic subscription fee and play. But
these are definitely NVIDIA partner games too, right? So Hawken was shown at NVIDIA demos for a long time. PlanetSide 2 has added PhysX into the game. Not a coincidence.
Hey, do you know how many hats I could buy with $150?
Oh,
Team Fortress hats, you mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, probably a lot.
One or two.
So if you have any feedback on that, go to that thread at PCPro.com and leave me your feedback, because I know NVIDIA is watching it and AMD is watching it, and they want to know what people think, regardless of what the sales happen to be. Let's talk about Corsair acquiring a company called Simple Audio that I had never heard of before. That Josh says they are now doing an aggressive expansion into new markets. Josh, please explain.
Okay, Simple Audio. It's a Scottish company, and as I said in my article, if it's not Scottish, it's crap.
No, that's true. That's fair.
That they're doing some network-based multimedia stuff. So if you want to play streaming audio of any type in your house,
Okay.
it's a pretty high-end box that they have doing it. One
Is it like a
comes with
Sonos
built-in-
competitor?
Pardon?
Is it like a Sonos competitor?
I guess.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
All right.
But apparently it's a pretty robust part, and you can download an app for your cell phone to be able to play stuff through this box into your TV, home audio system, whatever. One comes with an amplifier built in, a 2x50 watt unit,
Yep.
which will power a pair of decent speakers.
Sure.
And so it's a home networking streaming audio, and Corsair has paid a couple $1 million to get into that company. And these are not going to be rebranded as Corsair. It's going to be Simple Audio still. But Corsair is using their marketing and distribution muscle and to get these products into Asia and North America as soon as possible, because it's a growing market with people being far more comfortable with home networking than they probably ever have been in the past. Apparently these boxes are a little pricey, so it's going to be interesting to see where they will come down and who will be willing to buy them when they get here.
The Sonos comparison would be interesting to me, because I love the Sonos devices, and their capabilities are great if these offer the same type of capability but are somewhat less expensive, because Sonos is also known to be very expensive. Music streaming and radio. Okay. Ken is saying maybe they don't network together like the Sonos does to have like multiple zones throughout your house.
No, you can have something like 5 or 7 of these throughout your entire house.
Okay. Yeah, I see that here. Okay. So it shows multiple of them throughout the house. Music services. See, this may be where they're, I don't know what the hell Deezer is, or WE7, or TuneIn, whereas Sonos supports things like Pandora and Spotify and the major streaming music services, which is what makes them pretty awesome. What are the prices that we're looking at? You said they were kind of pricey, but do you remember any of them?
I've heard upwards of $700 for the amplified version.
Okay, that's right in line
That's
with the Sonos
pricey.
stuff. That's not great. So Corsair doing interesting things,
Because they're not very aggressive when going into new markets.
Yeah, not at all.
No.
This is the first time they've acquired somebody to do that, though, right? Like,
No.
No, I think they've acquired others. But
they didn't acquire like an SSD. Well, they acquired the SSD controller company, but after they entered the SSD market, they didn't acquire a case vendor. They didn't acquire a power supply vendor.
Suppose they didn't buy
Keyboard stuff?
ASE Tech either, but
I don't know.
they're sure
Ken was saying there might have
partners.
been a European company that they acquired for something, but I can't remember.
Me neither.
For mice or keyboards, I don't know. Maybe, but either way. Keep it up, guys. If it's something that comes across our desk, we will be sure to test it out and let you guys know. Maybe our final news story, I'm not exactly sure. Intel officially jumps in the TV or set-top box business. Apparently, they actually confirmed they will release hardware, Jeremy?
Yeah, the good old leader of the new Intel Media Group that they've put together, which is, and where is his name? Eric Huggers, the guy they put in charge of that. Apparently Intel's getting bored. They're looking at going after somebody else. In this case, it's satellite and major cable providers.
Nice.
Because the thing is that, Apple TV, Google TV, Netflix, everyone, it's subscription-based. It's not live streaming TV. That is one of the actual definites that we got out of this announcement from Intel. Because, you have seen the device at Power VR booth, was it? Or Imagination?
Imagination.
Yeah, CES. So we've seen it. It's a nyek like device. But on the other hand, Intel won't say, well, we might be selling TVs. We might be selling set-top boxes. We're going to be selling something by the end of the year. But the big thing that they came out with was the announcement that we will be streaming live TV. That's a lot different from a lot of the other service providers that they'd be going against in what you'd consider Intel's traditional market, going against Google and Apple and Netflix and, God, how many other live streaming videos can you get right now? Hulu, well, except in Canada. But in this case, they're saying we will be doing live streaming TV, which in a way is a very big thing. Sports all of a sudden becomes a possibility brought to you by Intel. One thing that I kind of think of this is the idea that if they can get their own broadcast going, it probably won't be too hard for them to do targeted advertising. You know, instead of watching commercials, you'd be getting targeted advertising. This might be very, very attractive for advertisers. So it is possible that Intel could suddenly decide, I'm going to take on satellite providers, cable providers, on their own turf. And it might cost a little bit more. It might cost about the same. We don't know yet. But the fact that they can provide live TV and the fact that they've got deep enough pockets to say,
I hope it's
we can buy broadcasting rights.
I hope it's free and subsidized by Francois.
Well, that would be nice.
That's what I want.
I don't think so. I kind of think you're looking at either basic commercials or more likely targeted commercials based on, search history from the other Xbox Live, the other Intel services that you are a part of. Or not Xbox Live, sorry. The other fun Intel things that are offered.
Another reminder before we get into our hardware software picks of the week, don't forget, this coming Tuesday, February 19th, Crysis 3 game stream, win games and graphics cards, courtesy of AMD, PCPro.com/live at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. 2 7900 cards we're going to give away, and 4 combo codes for Crysis 3 and Bioshock Infinite. So you'll definitely want to be there for that. Now, let's move on to our hardware software picks of the week, starting with me because I get to go first. We already talked about this is a Raspberry Pi inside this clear case. This clear case doesn't come with every Raspberry Pi, apparently. It's got the Raspberry Pi logo on it, and it's got some ventilation holes up top there, as well as some across the bottom. This is a great idea because it has some mounting picture hanging mounting holes there, and it's got some little rubber feet on the bottom. Pretty nice little device. Like I said, $25 or $35 depending on which model you get for just the Raspberry Pi PCB device, and then 10 or $15 for this piece of plastic that goes around it, which seems a little crazy. You can see the Raspberry Pi website here. I don't know who Lady Ada is. I'm not hip enough in the community, but they apparently chatted with the president. But here's what's really important: lighting
I'm
schemes.
disappointed in you, Ryan.
Minecraft, it's here. The Pi edition. I guess that's the first thing I got to do. And it turns out that's a whole operating system, right? No, you run it on what? The Debian variant. Okay, so yeah, I don't really play Minecraft, but it might be worth putting on there just so you can say that you had it on that tiny little device. So I'd like to see how well it performs as well. Next, Jeremy.
Still in shock that you don't know who Lady Ada is. Well. Anyways, my pick is ping-p32-s110 IP address. It is something to do when you're very bored at work and you want to see if you can crash Intel network controllers. It's unlikely it's actually going to happen because not only does it have to be an 82574L, it has to have been made by a company that improperly did the EEPROMs. It's not actually straight across the Intel controller for NICs, but for certain ones, if you send a certain packet, a value of 32 or 33 to OX47F, you will take away the ability of that NIC to receive packets until it's actually completely powered off. A reboot won't fix it. You will need to pull the power and let it go down. Chances are that almost every single instance of this is going to be fixed by a BIOS update in the not too distant future. But seriously, not only is this a hell of a way to entertain yourself at work, the amount of research that had to go in to figure out that two specific packet values at a specific address. Oh, and it's immunized. If a computer's been up and running for a while, the second that it receives an OX34 in that position, it's safe. It won't crash again.
Do we know what motherboard this is on?
It's on a lot of Intel server boards, which also kind of makes it interesting because they don't get their BIOSes flashed very often.
Because on the statement from Intel, it says Intel worked with the author as well as the original motherboard manufacturer to investigate and determine root cause.
Yeah, it was faultily programmed EPROMs. It was a bad flash on an EPROM.
Intel's belief that this is an implementation issue isolated to a specific manufacturer, not a design problem with the Intel 82574L gigabit Ethernet controller.
It's true. That's what I mean. You're not only going to have to find one that is actually specifically vulnerable, you're going to have to catch it fairly quickly after a reboot, because otherwise it will have been immunized by getting another packet in that address. In the meantime, it's funny, and the guy that researched this and pinned it down to that exact crash, a lot of respect for him.
A lot of time for that guy. Next.
Me?
You.
You know, I'm waxing poetically.
This is your pick of the week.
I'm just imagining backwards. Okay, maybe I should stop now. No! GoodOldGames.com is finally offering System Shock 2 tomorrow. In about 7 hours, it unlocks.
Oh, I get it. I get the countdown timer now.
That it's probably one of the best games I've ever played in my life.
Probably one of the scariest.
You go down to the medic monkey level, and the sounds that they have there is so stinking creepy. It's amazing. The graphics, sure, they suck for today, but the ambience, the things you can do, just the overall experience, it's second to none.
This introduced what? Leaning, ammo types. Games
you got to repair guns every 5 minutes, which is a pain in the ass because, I'll tell you what, in the 24th century,
sounds awesome.
They better have better quality control on their firearms than what they show here.
Well, the problem is by then the president has outlawed all firearms, so the art of building them has crumbled. And
no, that's Dead Space.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, it was similar.
And $10.
Is that what it's going to be? They don't have a product page for me to go show like screenshots of it and stuff before.
Not yet. It will be open tomorrow.
Click on my link and go to the RPS. Got lots of shots from it.
Well, okay. Is that this one?
And still guaranteed to be less buggy than Colonial Marines.
Yeah. Oh well. All right. Last but never least in our hearts, Alan.
Okay, you guys ready for this?
There?
It's going to be a little show and tell. Let's see here.
Oh, great.
Okay. So, remember this thing?
Yes.
IOSafe, right?
We melted it.
We didn't melt it, but we watched other people melt it. Because I just didn't happen to have a furnace that could go 1,550 degrees Fahrenheit for half an hour.
It over.
So, anyway. So, that thing...
But if you built an arc welder out of a PSU...
That's maybe I need a few, 100 PSUs of arc welding to mess this thing up. Or to even put a dent in it, for that matter.
I'm pretty close to that.
Okay, so that real awesome from the aspect of you're protecting data for fire, stuff like that.
Sure.
There's only one hard drive in there, right? Okay. Then, Synology box, disk station, right? Little NAS box. You can put a couple of hard drives in there, and it gives you gigabit Ethernet out the back, some USB, some SD card reader, that kind of jazz, right?
Sure.
Basically a little nifty toaster-looking box to put storage on your network, and it can be a RAID, and it has a couple of drives in it, right?
Sure, why not?
Disadvantage, this thing in a fire, not so good, right?
Yeah, that's bad news, yeah.
It's toast. Whatever hard drives are in there, they're melted.
Catch your house on fire. Yeah.
Now for the fun part.
Okay.
What if you took both of those and you put them together?
You'd have a sandwich.
You'd have an IOSafe N2.
All right.
So
which
does
is
it have nitrogen in there?
this.
I see what you did there.
I think it
That's
has
a
lead
science joke.
in there, honestly. All right, so same kind of stuff on this Synology box. USB, SD card, and then if I spin it around without dropping it, hopefully.
So it's not a glass table.
Even touching me, knock monkey.
Yeah, on my glass table. There's the gigabit Ethernet and a couple of USB 3 ports.
I wonder what speed that gigabit Ethernet port runs at.
And gigabit.
Yeah, we'll see.
I wonder if you can ping it with, Anyway.
Hey, what's the controller in there?
So that's basically what this box is. It's
Okay, all right.
the disk station. It runs the Synology software. It has the same front end. It has like the same GUI, the same plugins you can add, all that same stuff. So it's as if they took one of those boxes and they stuck it inside an IO safe.
Oh, here's that guy.
That guy.
Hey, what's up, guy?
Dude, I'm so stoned. I smoked like
the all new.
last night.
Come on, there's got to be a place where they melt it, right?
They're gonna melt it? I don't know. I don't think they're gonna melt
Only
it.
they could give me some Ritz crackers. I'd be so happy.
All right, well, they're not going to melt it. Never mind, video.
All right,
So this is a review coming up soon?
it will be, yes. This
Okay.
thing just showed up.
So soon.
But it's something that I was hoping that they would do from the time when we reviewed the IOSafe, because
Right,
that's how we reviewed the IOSafe, right? We connected it to the Synology disk station for the purposes of putting it on the network, right? So you had protected storage that was on the network, but the catch was there wasn't any redundancy. It was just the one drive in the IOSafe.
So if your hard drive, if while your house is on fire, your hard drive, let's say reader, the head failed,
Yes.
that would be the worst.
Well, no, it's like because if you're trying to use it for the purpose of network attached storage, like full time, but you want it to be protected in a fire, right?
Yep.
Then if the hard drive just failed, and there wasn't a fire, you still lost all your data.
No, I gotcha.
That's
You wouldn't
kind
have
of,
recorded the arsonist burning your house down.
So I mean, I could see where they were coming from initially, where they're like, okay, listen, this thing is only really a backup device that could survive a fire, but people don't want, I hate to say this, but people don't like the backup thing so much as they would rather buy the 2 drives and put them in a RAID, thinking that they're covered as far as backups, even though they're not. But if you want to do that and you want it to be really as protected as possible, then this is the box you would want to have, right? Because then it would survive the fire.
And it comes in matte black, right?
Yes, it comes in matte black. So the pricing on it, it varies with what kind of hard drives you want in the thing, but there is a diskless, said that clearly for Josh's purpose.
Can you roll the edges up? Does it provide a firm grip?
The diskless version is like $600.
So you can add your own hardware. I actually would have thought that you wouldn't have been able to access the inside. Because wasn't that the case on the first one?
There's a couple of there are security Torx bits on the front, so
Sure.
you have to know what you're doing if you're going to do this.
But didn't the first fireproof one not have like a user replaceable drive?
It wasn't meant to be user replaceable.
I thought that was part of the fire safety part of it, was that there's no way for fire to creep in, that is because of that it's not user replaceable
That's true. There's actually a picture. Where is it? If you hit the media gallery link on their site, the second or under the product page for the N2, the second
But
picture.
fire doesn't carry Torx screws.
Yeah. No, it's a pretty beefy front lid that goes on it that lets you access the disks, and you can see there's actually the fire insulating material is surrounding the drives.
I see that. Okay.
Yeah.
That's styrofoam.
Definitely not styrofoam.
Look at that one. That one's on fire and it's being wetted.
Yeah. That stuff is actually this really high temp yet consumable plastic. It actually
And the various ports on this machine doesn't give the fire a place to creep in and burninate your hard drive?
Well, no, because that stuff is outside the insulating material, right?
Okay.
So that's designed. Those ports are going to be gone. You're not going to be able to use this thing.
But
anymore
wires and
after.
stuff have to go through the insulating material.
Correct.
Yes, and the wires do it in such a way where it still is able to insulate from the heat.
And I assume heat has to escape in some fashion so that the hard drives don't furnace themselves to death.
Yeah, there's a fan.
I don't understand that. So let's light it on fire.
Okay, so it's
There's
actually
a fan
able to have
pulling air
some
out, then
openings.
there's a place for air to come in.
There is. There's a place for air to come in.
No,
but
it's
the
exit
fans-
only.
but the fans shut off when there's a fire, and there's not enough airflow for the fire doesn't just keep going all the way down this. It's not like out of a movie where it chases the people down the channel and stuff.
I think you have to put this in a fire.
My oven?
No, like start a bonfire and throw that shit in there.
Well, see, here's the thing. This I have to send back.
Bullcrap.
So
They want it back.
Send them an email and CC me and tell.
By the way,
and
my
I will
house
tell
burned
them.
down, and unfortunately, this was in it.
No, I'm serious. No, I'm serious. Say that
I'm living in my
the
IO
big
safe.
feature of this device is not that you can put 2 hard drives in it. I can put 2 hard drives in a toaster and run array to array.
So you
through
want me to find
gigabit.
some place in town?
No, don't
that-
you? I
that
mean,
can-
can't
that
you
has
can't you
1550
create like a?
degrees.
Can't you create? No, it doesn't have to be super extreme. But I'm saying if you have a fire pit in your backyard, leave it in there for a couple of hours.
I don't know. I guess.
I'm just saying. That's kind of the big point about this. It's like getting a brand new graphics card and saying, well, it runs pretty quiet. Yeah, not what you're looking for.
You just want me to light some stuff on fire.
I just think that's yeah, I do, but that's kind of the point. I don't really care what it performs like. That's not why you buy this device. You want to know that it's not going to run 3 megs a second, like some of the other crap that we have in this office. But you also want to make sure that it does the thing that it's so expensive for, which is not melt your data in a fire.
That's what I like about this one. It's actually not that much more expensive than the Synology Disk Station.
Okay. Fair enough. So, but I
It's
tell
surprising.
them we'll do a video of it. It'll be great. If it fails, that'll suck for them. If it doesn't fail, then it'll be amazing for them. I think that's fair for a $600 device. Easy money. Easy money. All right, so that is going to wrap up our show for this week with a discussion of how we're going to light different computer components on fire. Don't forget our live events coming up this week. 2 of them on Tuesday. One of them doesn't have a specific time yet. We're nailing that down now. That will be an NVIDIA special presentation with Schmom Meterson and an NVIDIA special presentation. I guess that's all I'll say. And then later that night, we're going to have AMD talk with us about Crysis 3. We're going to give away some video cards. We're going to give away some game keys. It's going to be a very busy day at the streaming computer sitting right here, and our bandwidth usage and that kind of stuff as well. So make sure you are here in time for that. PCPro.com/podcast is the URL where you can get the RSS feeds and the YouTube links and all that kind of stuff. And if we encourage you all to share that URL with all of your friends. And then also share the fact that you can watch us record the show live if you want that information right away. You need to know Josh's stance on whatever random product he's going to talk about, and you need to know if we actually have melted anything as early as possible. Then PCPro.com/live is the place you want to go for that. We record the show Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, so you can be there for that. I guess that's it. That's all I got. Make sure you check out all the reviews and news at PCPro.com. We'll have a lot of stuff going on over the next 7 to 10 days, so pay attention, ladies and gentlemen. Pay attention. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Alan Malventano.
Quick Draw McGraw with the microphone. Quick Draw.